Well, glad to see everybody here today. This is our Growing Faithful Family classroom, fourth grade classroom, which I was going to teach. And like Shelly said, I craftily hoodwinked her into helping me out with this and then leading it and then in proceeding to turn it into a congregational event. Just for everybody to get an opportunity to follow through with this. But I think it's important because our fifth grade, sixth grade, seventh grade on parents really would never have had an opportunity to be in this class. So I want to make sure that I offered it up to the congregation because it is such an important issue, and we are seeing just a tremendous amount of side effects from this particular thing, from technology and all those sorts of things. I've said this before that my son, just the difference between my son's graduation, which I believe was like 2009, and my daughter Elizabeth's graduation, and that would be, I guess, maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 years after that, or maybe 9 years after that sort of thing. And the difference that I've seen between his classmates and the classmates that are in my daughter Elizabeth's class, you're talking about a major difference impact, and this is all because of social media and the impact that this has had on our kids. So I think it's worth paying attention to. Shelly's going to kind of walk us through. Shelly Curtis, thank you for being here. She teaches in the public school system and deals with these types of issues and problems, so she's more than qualified to be able to bring this to you. She's going to share a lot of information with you. We do have a contract, a covenant contract that we're going to be able to give to any of our parents that want to do this with their kids. I was shooting out feelers amongst the district and our synod and got a bunch more feedback. So we're going to have a hard time trying to categorize all the information that you're going to get at it, but we want to make sure it's all on our YouTube channel, easily accessible for you at a later date, so that you can, whatever area is intriguing to you, you can find out more information on there. But I've had DCEs, directors of Christian education, reach out to me. Our synod has reached out to me, and they're really excited that we're doing this too. So we'll kind of share that covenant back with them because they didn't really have one. So I think ours is short and sweet, but even one of them, we had a DCE from the St. Louis area, and I got a copy of the Snapchat contract that the kid created because he wanted to be on that media, and there was a little pushback on there, but then the mom the child on his own did the covenant that if I do this, then you can take it away, or you can do these sort of things. And so it was a very healthy approach on that particular thing. So let's begin with a word of prayer, and then I'm going to turn it over to Shelly. All right. So gracious Heavenly Father, we give you thanks for all of the blessings that you give to us each and every day, including the blessing of technology. So as we are broadcasting on the World Wide Web through our Facebook channel and later to put that up on YouTube, we certainly see the blessings that you give to us through this technology, where members that are sick at home or members that are traveling can still tune in and take part of the important ministry that's taking place here at St. Stephen. But also we are strongly aware of the dangers that are out there in our World Wide Web. And we also understand and help us to understand a little more deeply the challenges that our youth are facing in trying to sort through all of this sort of stuff. So we pray that you would just be with Shelly as she's presenting to us, and we also ask that you would, again, bless our congregation, bless our kids, bless our team, that we keep first and foremost in mind that we want all of our kids to be with us in heaven for all eternity, and help us to be the best that we can to support that in all the ways that are possible out there for us to be supporting this ministry. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Shelly. And then I also just ask, because you may have questions, make sure you have a microphone when you ask your questions, because those questions will come over clear as day on the online if you have a microphone. But they don't if you don't.
Okay, well, thank you, Pastor Joe. Yes, I was absolutely bamboozled. This was going to be a really small group of people, and then it turned into more people, and then it turned into, oh, you're going to wear a microphone, we're going to post it, you're going to be online. Like, great, I already said yes, so it's too late. So I am Shelly Curtis, and I am going to be talking, my expertise is really more 11 to 15-ish year olds, but this will cover more. of that, but this is just kind of how to survive technology in kids, and it's changing all of the time, and it's very hard to keep up with, and I am definitely feeling my age when my kids can do way more on technology than me. They're helping me with my phone, they're helping me with my computer. So they are way smarter than we are, and we're the ones that are supposed to be helping them navigate through it, and they know way more about it than we do. So I am Shelley Curtis. I work in LPS. I have been a middle school counselor for 19 years. I've worked with adolescents for 25. My husband, Gabe, is a special education teacher at the high school, at Lee Summit High School in Lee Summit. He's done that for 25 years. My son, Joey, is a sophomore at LHS, and my daughter, Chase, is a 7th grader at LMS with me. So just an overview of what I wanted to talk about today, and the number one thing that I want to say, there is no shame. I'm not trying to shame anybody on the decisions that you make for technology, and if you've done things different than Gabe and I have, everybody's journey with their kids is different and their needs are different. So I am just giving information and just things that I have noticed through working with kids. So if you're doing something different, that's absolutely fine. There's no shame. I'm just giving information. One of the things I wanted to be sure to talk about, and I called Pastor saying, are people going to think this is really weird when we're supposed to be talking about technology? And I really want to talk about the brain. It really does go hand in hand with how kids utilize technology and what we are expecting them to do with technology and where their brain is at. So I'm not going to dwell on it, but I do think it's very important information for you to have. And I wanted to give a shout out to Sonia Richardson, is a local therapist here in Liberty. She's been doing therapy with kids for 10 years. Before that, she was working at Synergy Services. She has a plethora of knowledge. Liberty School District is very fortunate that we get to contract with her, and she comes in and does professional development for us. She was on the school board before. Her kids came through the schools. Her dad was an educator as well. So I really value the information that she has given us, and I had never really been taught about the teen brain and where their development is and how it impacts them at school, and it makes so much sense when you hear about it. So it makes sense when you're talking about technology and kind of putting kids on their own, what they're truly capable of doing and what they're not capable of doing. And this was absolutely eye-opening for me, so I just wanted to talk about that a little bit. I'll talk about technology, pros and cons. There are pros to kids having technology. I don't want to only focus on the cons, so I did want to talk about some of the amazing things that kids have an opportunity to do because of technology. And then a lot of parents are asking counselors at the schools, when is a good time for my kid to get a cell phone? And then I do want to touch on social media as well. So number one, teen brain, which the packets that you have, I know this is really small, and like I said, I'm not going to dwell on it, but a very important thing to understand about the brain. So when Sonia comes and speaks to us at the schools, and I've heard other presenters talk about it as well, the brain, it's like your fist. This is the brain. This is the brain stem. This is the front. Information goes through the brain from the bottom, and it goes up. The brain grows from bottom to top and from inside out. The brain is not fully developed until someone is 25 years old, and it can be 25 to 26, depending on the person. So I was thinking about when I graduated from college that I was 22 years old, and I go in the workforce, and I am full-on adulting and dealing with teenagers at that time, and I didn't even have a fully developed brain. So sometimes I think about some of the decisions I made, and I go, well, that makes sense too. So when talking about the brain, and this is your fist, your brain, the upper part here, the prefrontal cortex, which is what gives us the opportunity to think before we act, our executive functioning, that all comes from that prefrontal cortex. That is what is not developed until you're about 25 or 26 years old. So the brain stem, that's where you're learning and you're storing information. And then the inside, if you lift your fingers, this part, this is the amygdala. This is where our teens are. 80% of the time, they are in their amygdala. That is the primitive brain, fight, flight, freeze. That's where they are 80% of the time. They don't have the ability to think before they act yet. We want them to, but they don't even have that full ability to do it yet. So it's just important for you guys to understand when we're like, why are the kids doing what they're doing? It's because they're thinking from their amygdala. They have that primitive brain. So based on the stage of their brain development, adolescents are more likely to act on impulse. They're going to misread or misinterpret social cues and emotions, and I'll talk about that in a second. They get into accidents of all kinds. They're quicker to be involved in fights, and they engage in dangerous and risky behavior. They are less likely to think before they act because they're in their amygdala, pause to consider the consequences of their action, and change their dangerous or inappropriate behaviors. So thinking about those things, hopefully you're kind of thinking about your kids and thinking about kids that you see, or maybe when you were a kid and you're like, okay, some of that really ridiculous stuff that we were doing, that's kind of where my brain was at the time. It's not 100% the kid's fault. It's kind of where their ability is at. But having this information and doing the job that I do and raising my kids, this makes so much more sense to me now that somebody talked to me about it. So the overall characteristics of our teenagers and their brain is they're prone to risk-taking. Their underdeveloped sense of moral responsibility. That doesn't mean that they don't know right from wrong. Kids start knowing right from wrong at age 5, but they just don't know the nuances of it necessarily. So they know, they're just acting before they think. They're less able to anticipate the consequences of their actions because you need that prefrontal cortex that is not fully developed for them yet. They act on what they feel versus what they think. And changes occurring at this time slow down the ability to accurately name feelings, both for self and others. So I'm not going to go in a deep dive. I just need you to trust me. I'm giving you factual information. There was a study done that they had adults and kids look at a picture of somebody and say, okay, what emotion is that person feeling right now based on this picture? So let's say that the picture is somebody is sad. All the adults in the study could look at the picture and say, well, that person's sad. 80% of the kids went, they're mad, they're scared. They couldn't tell what the emotion of the picture was, which for adults, it's so obvious to us, they don't know. And that is part of their brain development. Mood swings are very common in teenagers. I think we all know that. And a lot of that, it's because they're in their amygdala most of the time. The primitive brain, the fight, flight, freeze, they're gonna be moody. The other thing about the characteristics of teens is the hyper-awareness of self. So working in a middle school, I have a lot of students come in and I constantly hear, well, Mrs. Curtis, I know everyone is talking about me right now. I walk in the room, everyone's looking at me. I can tell they're judging me. And if I could get them to understand, most teenagers don't look outside of their own face. So they are way more concerned about themselves than they're concerned about you. But so kids are very hyper-focused on themselves, but they're also thinking, well, everyone else is really hyper-focused on me too. They're not. Okay, so I do want to talk about some of the positive impacts of technology on children, and the organization piece is fantastic. I don't know about Martin Luther Academy, and I know we have Smithville and Kearney Kids, but LPS, we're using Canvas as one of our platforms. We have an amazing digital calendar on there for kids where they can access the calendars of all of their teachers' Canvas pages, which has their assignments, when their tests are going to be due. We are trying to teach kids to utilize technology to put everything in one place for them to get more organized. I am ancient, and I still love my paper calendar. I love it, love it. But my husband and I have to use digital organization because we have kids that don't have driver's licenses yet, and so we're driving our kids around all the time, or they have different activities. So we have a shared Google Calendar that everything's listed on there. Kids have the opportunity to start doing that for themselves now. We didn't have that before, and it's fabulous if kids really use it. Research and critical thinking, again, ancient. When I was a junior in high school, I did a huge paper on Tourette syndrome. I had to go check out 10 books start trying to read through all of them to find the information that I want to do a research paper. So for us, working on a research paper was, I think it was at least a month and a half of my junior year that I was working on this paper. Our kids can get online and type in Tourette syndrome and have a plethora of information that it would have taken me forever to get it, and they have it at their fingertips. And I do think that school districts do a really good job trying to teach kids what is good information, what is credible information, what is not. Because we all as adults know just because it's on the internet doesn't make it true. And so we are focusing on helping kids understand this is a credible source, this is not a credible source. And our kids, I feel like, pick that up pretty quickly and have access to a lot of really useful information. Bonding and community, I think, is huge when it comes to technology. We have foreign languages that are available at my school. Well, we have one of our French teachers is from Belgium. She Skypes in with people from home, and they're teaching kids about her culture, teaching kids about what happens in the schools there, where without technology, we wouldn't be able to do things like that. Self-expression and the creative and exploring interests kind of all go together. We have kids as early as middle school, they're doing podcasts. My daughter is very into music. There's something called GarageBand. She gets on, she can put piano, guitar, drums, and her voice all together and create music and put it out on the internet. You see kids that are making music, making videos about sports, putting it on YouTube, and you can explore those interests. I had a kiddo that was interested in zoology. Okay, well, let's get online and look about zoology. Where would you go to school to do that? What would you be doing? Where could you live? It's so much information, and our school district has career readiness programs, and we have a platform that we use that kids can get on and look at their personality traits. They can look at what they enjoy doing, what their skills are, and they can start putting them in career clusters. All of that is due to technology. So there is really, really fabulous things that we can be doing with our kids through technology. So it is not all gloom and doom. This stuff is fabulous, and we didn't have access to any of it. Now there is also the negatives. What I have noticed, and I'm sure some of you guys have too, social skills for kids have plummeted, just plummeted. I want you to pay attention when kids and adults are talking, and I'm talking about my own kids too, we've noticed it. When I was younger, I would talk with, we'd be at a family reunion, and it's all these people that I don't know, and I'm included in the conversation, and we're all talking. Now, when you look at things like that, and there's young people trying to have conversations with older people, see how much they're not talking. They're not contributing. A lot of them, if they have cell phones, they're off to the side, and they're on their phone, not involved in the conversation at all, or it's really hard to get them engaged because they don't have the social skills that we have. And some of it is our fault. I know our district, we're one-to-one, and they're in kindergarten, and we give them a device. And sometimes kids use that device as opposed to socializing with other people. They're more engaged in the technology than the people. I also talk to kids that they'll talk about something that happened over the weekend, and they're talking about texting back and forth. And as they're going through the story, I'm realizing they were in the same room. And I said, so you said it was over text? Yeah. But you were together? Yes. So why were you texting? And something, I thought it was very interesting, and I never would have thought of it. They said, well, I have more time to think. When I text, I don't want to say something stupid. So if I text, it gives me a chance to think about it before I decide what I'm going to say. And what if they ask me something and I don't know the answer? Where for me, I would turn to them and say, let me think about that, or I don't know. And they go, oh, that's embarrassing. So one of the stories, they're on the couch at the same house, texting each other back and forth. I cannot fathom this, but that is what kids are doing now. They feel way more comfortable communicating with each other online, and it is so different than communicating face-to-face. And look at young people that are doing customer service in different stores. It is very different than when I was doing customer service as a teenager too. My ability to have conversations with people was very different. Their relationships are deeply impacted, where I feel like they're really connected with each other. But I think it's different when you're looking at someone's face and hearing their emotion when they're speaking than reading something online. You can read it very differently than it was typed. The other thing I've noticed is I have kids that feel like they are deeply connected with people that they have met online, which really scares me. It could be through social media. I had a student that met a man through Pandora, the music app. I had no idea that you could message people through Pandora, and someone found her on Pandora, and she was having a relationship with this person that they feel deeply connected to each other, but you trying to explain to a kid, you might think you're talking to a 12-year-old, that could be some 50-year-old man. You don't know who they are because you don't see them, but they describe them as, that's my best friend. You've never met this person. Some of them, they're in another country, allegedly. How is that your best friend? And just getting them to understand that is very, very difficult. The health problems, emotional and physical. This is the thing that I am seeing the most. I'll start with physical. Kids are very sedentary, where some of the technology, and my son does it too, he goes downstairs and he plays video games with lots of friends, and he's got his headset on and he's sitting somewhere. But my kids are also active and do other stuff outside of school. Some kids, that's all they're doing. They are sitting down at school, and then they go home and they're sitting in the basement, and there's no physical activity. Kids need exercise for their brain to grow as well, and just to be healthy people. We need it too, and they're not getting it. The emotional part of it is what I have really seen. This is an example that imagine something embarrassing happened to you at school when you were in 7th grade. Everyone laughed and it was awful and you were mortified, and then a few weeks passed and everyone found new things to laugh about and they moved on. You don't forget how embarrassed you were, but you can move on too. Now, imagine you did something embarrassing in 7th grade and everyone laughed and it was awful. Someone caught it on Snapchat, turned it into a meme and a TikTok. Everyone in school saw it, took a screenshot of it, spread it further, and you couldn't get away from it, and no one forgot, and you couldn't either. And people were still resharing it months later. Just sit there and imagine it for a minute. That's what's happening to our kids now, especially with social media. And things are turned into memes. People do get recorded when they're doing something embarrassing and it's spread. I had a student many years ago that made some poor decisions in sending some things on her cell phone. And in high school, she had to deal with some very significant loss and grief, and it was devastating. And all of those things resurfaced for her at the same time. And it had been 5 years before. That you can't get away from it. It's permanent, and it's just soul-crushing for kids. And we as adults kind of there's some funny memes and stuff that we pass around that it's a picture of somebody's kid, and we put something silly underneath of it, and we're passing it around to each other. We do it too, and we're adults. So imagine kids, they think it's hilarious, and if it's your kid, it's not very funny. And it's very difficult for kids, and I am seeing very high rates of depression and anxiety in my students because of things like this. And I can absolutely see why it would be. The other part is if, let's say there's a slumber party, and all of your friends are there and you're not invited. When I was a kid, I wouldn't know about it until probably Monday. People would talk about it a little bit, and then I'd be upset for a little while, and then maybe I could move on. Well, now, if you're on social media and you're in 7th grade and you see all of your friends are at a party together and you weren't invited, and they're putting pictures together and laughing and doing all this fun stuff, and you see it all weekend. And then people are still talking about it, looking at the pictures, sharing it. When you get to school, that's really hard. Like the FOMO, fear of missing out, is a true thing, and it really does impact kids, and it's in their face all the time because of social media and just group chats and things like that. Ability to focus is way more difficult when technology is involved. Kids are seeking, especially if you have a child that deals with ADD or ADHD, they get a dopamine hit from technology. It's instant, and they love it. And as adults, how many of us can say that we haven't sat in a meeting and we're supposed to be listening to what someone's saying, and our phone's there? Well, we're just checking our phone. Well, has anybody contacted me? Well, what time is it? Well, I'm just going to look at Facebook real quick. Or my principal's up there talking and I can see other people's screens. I'm like, well, they're shopping on Amazon. We all do it. And we're expecting kids to have technology, and when a teacher's teaching math, they're just supposed to be doing math. When they can play, they know they can get on games and do different stuff. It's just too pulling for them, and it is for us too. So their ability to focus is very difficult. And that, again, I'm going to tell you about a study that, just trust me, I promise you it's true. They did a study that they showed if a student has a cell phone on their desk, the ability for a child to focus on what's happening is cut in less than half because that phone's sitting there, because they're constantly thinking about, is somebody posting something? Is somebody trying to get a hold of me? Do I have any text messages? I'm going to check social media and real quick and see if anybody's on there. It's a true thing, but they also, part of the study was seeing if there's other kids around that person that has a cell phone on their desk, it impacts them just the same. That phone is distracting to them, where they're thinking about it as well. But so pay attention as an adult how many times when we're in meetings or we know we're supposed to be doing something else and we're also pulled into our technology, and we're expecting young people, again, that don't have that fully developed brain to be making the right decision, and we don't make it either. So, and just the dangers of browsing, I think that's super obvious. You spell something wrong and something gets pulled up. Kids being able to browse things that we probably would rather they talk to us about it, but if we hand them a cell phone and they have free reign on the internet, they can look up whatever they want, and we don't have the ability to intervene and kind of maybe give them more truthful or credible information, or information that we would want them to know about it. Okay, so that big question, when is a good time to get my child a cell phone? And this is when I want to say there's no shame in it. You need to do what's best for your family and what makes sense. Some of us, I was very fortunate, and my kids' elementary school got out at the same time as my middle school, so they'd be home 5 minutes, 10 minutes tops by themselves, and I'd be home. So it wasn't as big a deal for not to have a phone, because most of us don't have landline phones anymore. So typically we see that parents will go ahead and give their kid a cell phone. Or we get uncomfortable with how far is my kid walking from the bus home, and I want them to have their phone on them. When we were kids, I walked a couple miles to junior high and back, and my parents had no idea, and we didn't have cell phones. So I don't know what my parents would have done. But so now we just constantly want to know that our kids are okay and safe and where they're at, and the cell phone is what makes us feel more comfortable. So I absolutely understand that. I would say you also have to look at your kid's maturity level, because you could have a kiddo that's 14 years old and maybe you see the decisions they're making all the time, and there is no way that kid should have a cell phone that has access to everything. So then you need to decide, is that okay? I would say if you haven't already given your kid a cell phone, you need to put a plan or contract in place before you hand them the phone. Tell them how it's going to work. And it doesn't have to be a paper contract. I do like the one that you guys are going to be getting today. But for us, we did not do a paper contract. We had a conversation with our kids that it is my phone. I pay for it. I can have it whenever I want. I can take it away whenever I want. And I can go through it and see whatever I want on there anytime I want. I don't have to ask you. You should know all of their passwords to get on any of their apps that they have. You should have access to all of it. I will give you some resources for that here in a second about great software that you can use that can help you monitor your kiddo's cell phone as well. But one of the most important things is being a good role model, and I am a work in progress too. I am very proud of my kids. We don't have any family here, the way that they see what my kids are doing. I constantly post stuff about my daughter's show, if she's singing or in a show. My son plays golf. I post that stuff all of the time. And I do check Facebook way more than I should. I feel like that's the only way I know what's going on, is I find out all the information on Facebook is what tells me what activities are happening. So I need to be better about it as well. But if I'm on my phone all the time, it's very hard for me to talk to my kids about you shouldn't be on your phone so much if they see me on it all the time. It's a lot harder sell if we're doing it that way. And this is just a personal opinion, but middle schoolers are not ready for social media. They are not. It makes my job so much harder. That is one of the main things that I see kids for, is something that has been posted through social media or in group chats or whatever that makes it where kids are having a hard time coming to school and making it through the school day, which is very disheartening. Even if you have a very responsible middle school student, guess what? The other middle school students at school are not as responsible as your kid, and they have access to your kid too. I do hear a lot of, well, I let them be on social media, but I follow them, I have access to their account. And I think that's great, and I think you should have that. But you also have to understand that you don't control what somebody else is sending your kid. And by the time you saw it, it's too late. Your kid saw it, 50 kids already screenshot it and sent it around. Kids are not kind on social media. They just aren't. And I wish they were, but it makes it way harder for your kid. And that fear of missing out, they don't know what they're missing out on because they can't see it. So my son is a sophomore. He got Instagram this year. And now that he hadn't had it before, he doesn't really care about it that much. It's kind of passed for him. Also, he's a boy, and so he does have an account. He has posted nothing and just kind of follows other people and doesn't really do much with it. I will say, if you are a high school parent and your kid does any activity, you have to have Twitter, and your kid has to have Twitter because they post everything on there. I have not personally had any issues with any of my students in Twitter. Most of the younger kids aren't on Twitter, and the older kids, my son uses it for information for golf tournaments. Yeah, so he doesn't really utilize it that much. But so even if you were trying to make the choice, my kid's not going to have social media, the high school kind of dictates if your kid wants to know what's going on, they need to have Twitter. But I would say the high anxiety and depression that I'm seeing, I know high school counselors are seeing, and I'm sure Olivia's seen at the elementary schools and stuff as well, a lot of it has to do with technology and social media. Okay, so the good news, there are a lot of parental control options. There is way more than what I'm putting on here, but these are ones that I feel comfortable to talk about, that I know a little bit about. If you have Android phones, which part of me wishes we would have stuck with Android phones, but my kids talked us into getting Apple. But when I had all Android phones, we used something called Family Link, and it is through Google, and it is free, and it is so easy to use and control your kid's phone from. Like, anybody could do it, because I am not super tech savvy. But I figured that out real quickly, and my kids hated it, so I knew it was good. It's free, and I love free. So as soon as I switched, and we switched over to Apple, I learned, oh, I can't use Family Link anymore. So I did get into my iPhone settings, and there's something to do with screen time on there. I don't feel like it's as user-friendly. And sometimes I have my kids locked out of stuff, and then I can't unlock it even if I should, and my kids have to help me unlock it. But they just don't know the passcode. But so that, it's probably other people, they say they love it and it's easier for them. But once I had used Family Link, I felt like the settings through iPhone were a little more difficult, but it does work. But as soon as we switched to iPhones, I got on something called Bark, which I'm sure most people have heard of it. There is a Bark Junior if you have younger kids, and then there's just regular Bark if you have older kids. I paid $100 for the year. I know you can pay by the month, but I knew I was going to use it for at least a year. The benefit of Bark is you can dictate, here are the things I want to be alerted about. There's stuff about sexual content, suicide, any medical concerning information, profanity, bullying. There was just a bunch of different things that you could look into. So you could do what you're interested in, drugs and alcohol, whatever you wanted to be alerted about. And of course, I'm picking all these things. And then you hook it up through, it's on their phone, and it's on your phone, and you hook it up through the computer. And The problem is it works so good. I got so many alerts because anytime my son would look at YouTube, which a lot of kids, and I don't get it, but they watch people playing video games on YouTube, and he would watch someone playing a video game and there'd be a gun in it, well, I'd get an alert. Or Apple News would pop up every day on his phone and there'd be something about war. That would give me an alert. And I was getting, and it does even show you, here is the video that he watched that has it where you can watch the video that your kid is watching. I did like that. But I was getting so many alerts, I started not paying attention probably as much because there'd be like 500 in the week. And I'm like, but it did teach me how many videos about video games is this kid watching? This is nuts. But I did like, it does monitor the text messages and it would send me concerning text messages. I didn't like for me, and it may have been something I did, I wouldn't get it for 3 or 4 days sometimes. And thankfully it wasn't anything that was a huge emergency that I would have needed it. But it did lead to some really good conversations of, I don't like what's happening here. And it taught me a lot about the kids that my kids were interacting with. And is this somebody that I feel like you're safe with this person? And my kids, unfortunately, I was their school counselor and all of their friends' school counselors, so I know a lot of them anyway. But for when my son went to high school and started making friends with kids from other schools, I don't know these kids and I don't know their parents. And it sure taught me a lot, probably more than I wanted to know, but it led to some really, really good conversations. Disney Circle is another one I've heard of, which it's Disney, so you're going to pay for it. But other people, I didn't use it, but other people have used it, and it will monitor your internet and devices. But I know families that have really liked that, and they did that with their younger kids, and they felt really good about it. Then you can also, a lot of people don't know, you can call your own internet provider and ask to put filters on your internet, but it's going to filter you too. So just know when you're doing that, it's kind of filtering it for everybody. The other thing I wanted people to be aware of, I know this is for Liberty, I'm sure it's for other people too. Parents feel very comfortable with their kids having their school device because we have a filter. The filter is on our network. So it is filtered at school. When your kid takes their device to your house, they're on your network. It is not filtered anymore. And there's a lot of parents that just, there's your iPad, go in your room. They can look at whatever they want if you don't have something on your internet. And I think there was a lot of people in the school district that didn't know that as well. We're like, yeah, there's a filter on it. But as soon as they leave our network and go anywhere else, it's just like the internet anywhere else. You can look at whatever you want. And I think a lot of ways we caught on because kids would be looking at things they weren't supposed to, and then they would come to school and open their device, and then it flags our filter like that kid's looking at something they're not supposed to. But they were looking at it at home. We just figured it out when they got to school. And kids are very smart, and they figure out proxy servers and can get around the filter, and then we're always a day behind figuring out, oh, there's another one, we got to filter that. Kids are just too darn smart. They really are. It's a blessing and a curse. So my best advice that I would say if you hand your kid technology, do not have kids bringing technology to the dinner table, and do not allow them to have it in their rooms at night. Do not. I have a ton of parents that will go, well, it's my kid's alarm clock. Pay the $7, get them an alarm clock. They should not have a cell phone in their room at night. It impacts their sleep significantly. And again, even if you have their phone shut down, remember what I said about how distracting that is. But also, kids are smart, and sometimes they figure out a way around it. I don't know how many kids have come in my office and said, because I have a couch in there, and I have my dog, and they come in, and they're like, can I take a nap in here? No. Why? Well, I was up with my friends. My friend was going through a lot, and we were up till 2 talking. Because her phone's in her room, and so she can just talk to her friend all night and console her and help her. Kids are leaning way more on other kids for things they should be leaning on adults for because they have access to their friends 24 hours a day because of the device, which that is concerning too. I do think kids have good intentions, but they're not adults and they don't have all the information and they can't help like they think they can. And they are putting very significant, if somebody is having suicidal ideation, they shouldn't be talking to a 12-year-old about it. they should be talking to me about it. They should be talking to their parents about it or to a doctor about it. And when they're sharing it with their friends aren't always sharing it with us, so we can't help. And technology is making it where they can be up all night talking about those things. So they feel like, I can't go to sleep, I have to help my friend. I say no screens at the dinner table. How many of you guys go to a restaurant and watch everyone in the family on their cell phone, including the parents? It's very sad, especially when our kids are really struggling with communication and social skills. There should be no cell phones at the dinner table and no TV on. And I know a lot of us with kids doing activities, we're very busy, but as many nights a week as you can, you should be having family dinners. They take between 11 and 18 minutes. That's 11 and 18 minutes that your kids have to suffer talking to their parents, but that is where we get the most information. How was your day? I have a son, if I say, how was your day? Fine. Well, when we're at dinner, what made you laugh today? Hey, how was honors theoretical chemistry today? What'd you guys do in there? And ask more specific questions. You find out a lot about their friends, about their classes, when their tests are. It's forced family fun, as I like to call it. And once you lose that communication with your kids, it's really hard to get it back because they just start leaning on other kids, and that's not what we want. I want my kids to have close friends and people they feel like they can count on, but they need to still be talking to me. I have things that I can do for them that kids can't do, and information that I know that their friends may think they know, but they don't know. So that blue light that's on screens, it tricks a brain into thinking that they should be awake. So they say you really should have no screens an hour before you want your kid to go to bed. I will tell you, I am a hypocrite sharing this information. We're not doing that. But my kids don't usually have a hard time falling asleep at night. If you have a kiddo that does have a hard time falling asleep at night, maybe give that a try, or maybe 30 minutes beforehand, no screens, and see if it helps them go to sleep. So the sleep, that is the number one thing that I am seeing. Kids are really struggling with making good decisions, not even just in technology, just in life when they're sleep deprived. Kids really should have 8 to 10 hours of sleep a night. For middle school kids, they're supposed to have 9.25 hours of sleep a night for their brain to function appropriately the next day. So, I mean, we're already talking about moodiness. Well, put no sleep on top of that, it's a nightmare. Please help your educators out. We're struggling already. We need our kids to be sleeping. There's a shift in their circadian rhythms, and it makes sense that teen bodies get up later because they stay up later. High school kids really should be the late ones going to school because something happens at 8 a.m. that makes them go, I'm tired, I should be going to sleep. It's just natural in their brain. But we have activities and sports, we got to get them to school. So right when their brain is telling them, I'm tired again, they're starting their first class and taking tests. So the sleep cycles, I believe, Sonia said you should go through your sleep cycles 5 times a night uninterrupted to be a good night's sleep. And that's like the REM sleep, light sleep, deep sleep, that you should go through that 5 times. And that sleep deprivation, it impairs their cognitive ability, it escalates that moodiness, and it's cloudy decision making that they already have cloudy decision making anyway. They don't need help with that. So it's needed for that critical reorganization of the brain. It's time for moving the day's memories into long-term storage, and a brain that's hungry for sleep will get it even when you don't expect it. We have a ton of kids that are sleeping through class. They cannot stay awake. We have kids that have to stand in the back of the room so they'll be awake. Because why? They were up all night. So sleep is very, very important. My kids are furious. My son is a sophomore. He has a 9:30 bedtime. That he gets made fun of all the time for. And I'm like, well, I wouldn't be telling anybody, just go to bed. And my daughter has to be in bed at 8:30. And sometimes my daughter has trouble falling asleep. Well, if I let her go to bed at 10 o'clock, well, she may be up till 11:30, and I don't want to deal with her the next day, and none of her teachers would either. So this is just stuff to be, again, no shame, whatever you decide is best for your family, that give your kids a little bit more sleep and see how more pleasant they are to be around. Because if you're sleep deprived, even just an hour a night by Friday, you're 5 hours sleep deprived, and teachers still give tests on Fridays. So it really impacts your kids' academics, and it just impacts their ability to walk around and be a human that you want to be around. So there is resources that I know Sydney was going to send some stuff out, because I sent a bunch of stuff, but you guys don't need this much paper. But there's something called Screen Sanity, and this is their website. They have a ton of free resources. They also have a lot of information about the different social media apps and how it impacts kids. I'll say, please, the number one app your kids should not be on. Do not let your kids on Snapchat. It is the devil in social media. It is the worst thing that happened to our kids. It is awful. My son's a sophomore. He's still, if they are living in my house, they are not going to be on that thing. It is a nightmare. So this will give you information about Snapchat. It also talks about Instagram. Facebook, kids aren't really on. My son is on it and has friends that are my family, and he gets on it 0%. That was supposed to be the way that my family could stay in contact with him, and he's not doing it. But so on this, there's also something, I know just last week for sophomores, the Growing Faithful Families, we had kind of a contract that you could do for technology and driving. They have one of those as well. They have a phone contract you can use. They have kind of a parenting information that you can get. It does say on there, there's a book, and it says it's $10, but you can download it free. If you just give your email, it sends it to you free. That's if you want the physical book, but you can just download it and print it yourself. And they also have the opportunity for people to come and speak. You pay for them to come and speak. But a teacher that I worked with years ago, actually she's one of the people that started this, so it started in Kansas City, and I've heard them speak, and they really are fabulous. They have a ton of information and just make you feel like you're not alone in trying to navigate technology and kids. It is a tightrope. It is very difficult, and it's a huge part of my job, and it's still very difficult with my own kids. You don't want them to feel like they're left out because they don't have things, but at the same time, the things that they're being left out of, I'm okay with. I really am. I did go to a speaker who said your kid will be pretty socially isolated if they did not have a phone by age 16. I would argue and say as soon as they step foot in the high school, it might be a little socially isolating for them to not have a cell phone, but you can still put protections in place. And I'm not saying you have to give your kid a cell phone in 9th grade if you don't want to, so don't hear that. But then you're going to be doing a lot of following stuff on Twitter and figuring stuff out. But kids also, they don't use adults to make plans anymore. They all do it through text. And so then it is easy for your kiddo to be left out if they don't have the ability to do that, or they just need to be able to text you instead. But so this was a little quiz that I was going to make you guys do to see if you listened, because I'm an educator. But I will, because we don't have a ton of time left. Did anybody have any questions or anything? Yeah.
I just wanted to add, Shelley, the fact that we need to talk about iWatches.
Yes.
There's a big problem with that. Kids using them for many different reasons.
Yes.
Texting mom in the middle of the day or texting things. So that's just the only other element that I know that I have dealt with.
Yes.
Is those personal watches.
Oh, yes. And they have those in elementary school, too. So, yes, Lori, I see that, too.
One of the things I think about sometimes is holding technology back from the kids for so long, and then all of a sudden dumping all these things on them at once. Concerned that could be overload. Do you have any thoughts or suggestions about how to give them a little bit of responsibility at a time to kind of build up to that point?
Yeah. Did you hear the first part when I said, I don't know how to work this stuff and my kids do it all for me? My kids got an iPhone and figured that thing out in 5 minutes. They're just way smarter than us. So, and they figure out technology way quicker than we do. But I do see what you're saying. You don't want them to be behind, but I assure you, they pick it up way quicker than we do. But I also think if you're with them and you're teaching them how to research stuff, how to look things up, how to email somebody, even just doing a little bit of that, they're going to pick it up pretty quick, but you can do it while you're monitoring what they're doing. But studies have shown kids, if we waited till high school to give kids devices, they're still going to be better than us on them. So.
My name is Samantha Griffin. My bachelor's degree is in cybercrime investigation. I just wanted to offer that if anybody has any questions about the iPhone security, come talk to me. I've got my kids' phones on lockdown, and the extent of what you can do with the iPhone to monitor them and help control what they're seeing and who they can talk to and everything. I'm happy to answer any questions as well.
Do you know through those iPhone settings, you can't monitor their
You
text
can't.
messages though, right?
Yeah, you can't. You would need Bark in order
Yeah.
to monitor the exact verbiage on what they're texting. They do have a setting for sexually explicit so that they can't
Yes, I do have
send or
that.
receive
Yes.
photos that are inappropriate. But like you can control what apps they're downloading,
Yes.
so that way they can't download something that you would rather them not download. They have to ask permission to do that. You can control their contact list, so that way you know exactly what friends they're adding, so that you know who they can talk to. You can do the downtime. So like my kids can't text their friends after a certain time at nighttime. You can shut that down, but then they could text approved contacts.
Yes.
So like me, their dad, any adult that they would need to contact, say we are going out on a date night and we're not getting home until 10 o'clock, but their devices are shut down at 9 o'clock from texting friends, they can still contact those emergency contacts after that time. There's all sorts of settings, and I'd be happy to help anybody who had any questions about those.
Yes, and I love that because it's when you can look at your kiddos' contacts, and there was ones on there I went, oh no, delete, and I can delete it from my phone. So yeah, I really like it. I don't feel, have you had any experience with Family Link before through Google?
I've tried a little bit. I haven't had an Android for a long time.
Yeah.
I started the iPhone so that way when my kids would go visit family in California, we could FaceTime, because that was really before Android started
Yes.
anything to be able to do that. So I've tried Family because they've gotten laptops now.
Yes.
And helping put those settings on their Microsoft on the computers, but I haven't been as successful in figuring that out. I kind of like you with your iPhone, I'll lock it out and then I can't figure out how
Yeah.
I lock them out of something.
Yes.
But I am more familiar with the iPhones.
Yeah. Anybody else?
Have you had any experience with the program? I see a lot on social media where it says wait for 8, like wait for 8th
Wait
grade.
until 8th. Actually, this Screen Sanity, it's the same people.
Okay.
So, and I liked the wait until 8th. The problem with what I found with that, it's great when you have a group of parents that all together will say, we are going to make our kids wait till 8th grade to get a cell phone. I couldn't find anybody to do that with me. So, because that's when it's a lot easier to hold back on it when you have other parents in your group that they'll hold back on it too. But life circumstances are different for different people and maybe their kiddos need it. But sorry, Julie, go ahead.
No, that's fine. I can just say from our experience, we waited till 7th because our kids go away for high school.
Yeah.
And so we wanted some time with a phone when we were with them. But what I just want to reiterate what you said, like our kids really aren't hardly interested in social media anymore because they never had access to it. And I just am like so grateful for that because it's just such a huge distraction. And so even if they have phones, like limiting their social media is just a huge thing, I feel like.
It has been a nightmare. So being a counselor from 19 years ago when kids did not have phones in their hand to today, the main thing that I'm doing is putting out fires from cell phone stuff almost all day. Or something happened where, like the kind of thing I actually found on social media about that 7th grader, if something terrible happened at school, I could go home and I got a break from it. I was with my family. If somebody needed to get a hold, we had one phone, everybody shared it. So I got a break from school. If something terrible happens with your kid at school or what they feel is terrible, they are going to get messages and stuff sent to them all night about it. They never get a break. And that's where that depression and anxiety comes in. It's constant and it's very difficult. And social media is really what starts most of it.
One thing that we got recently was the Gab watch.
Yes,
and
I
so
have heard of those.
just in terms of like trying to communicate, I don't think it has any internet capability. But in terms of if you're want a means of communicating with your child, you set the context. There's texting options, and you can make phone calls. But you have complete control of who they contact with, who's on their list. And you can modify it, add, drop people, and all that stuff. So that's
Is it a watch too, or is
This
it?
is a watch, but they also they do have a phone option.
Okay.
I don't know how different they are, but specific to the watch.
Yeah.
It's only got like preset text messages, but you can also do audio. Like you can speak into it and
Yes.
send audio text. But you can have you completely control the contact list.
Yes.
And also the time of day that they can be on it and all that stuff. And it's worked really well for us just in terms of, hey, we want to be able to get a hold of you or you need to get a hold of us, but not a lot of the other access type of things.
And I feel like that's really great for people that maybe your kiddo is in elementary school and might be home a little more than you're comfortable with without them having a phone. That is a perfect option for that.
And it wasn't real, I don't remember the exact price, but I think it's $15 a month or something like that. So it's a pretty affordable, it's not super
cheaper
expensive.
than most cell phone
Yes.
plans. Yeah. We also did do track phone originally when my kids were home for 10, 15 minutes without me, sometimes where it's it's a certain number of minutes. It's like you buy a card and then they get a certain number of cell phone minutes and the text messaging, text back and forth, and you just pay by it. And then that phone, we had it set up where it only had certain numbers in it. But then by the time we did 7th grade as well, which isn't what we wanted, but COVID shut the world down. I really was going to wait till 8th grade for Joey, and then he turned 13 in May when everything was shut down, and I went, well, now he has no access to his friends, so we will go ahead and get him a cell phone, and then he didn't have anybody's phone number. So we got it, and I was like, oh, well, that kind of didn't work out as well as I wanted, but so he did get it earlier than I had wanted, and then so Chase got it too, but.
I'm just, excuse me, I'm just curious, what are the schools doing during class? Do the kids get to take their phones to
Okay,
class,
I
or
love
do
that
they
you
leave them
asked
in their
that.
lockers?
It depends on the school. So I will say when COVID was happening, our principal did allow kids to have their cell phones on them because we weren't allowing them to go to their locker. So, and they were carrying their backpacks and they were in their backpacks. And then we struggled a lot with kids they hide it in their hoodie. They can text without even looking. And they were really great about that. Again, they're smarter than us. But then now that things are a little more back to normal, in my building in particular, and I know some of the other buildings, there is no cell phones allowed. You can bring your cell phone, but it needs to be in your locker. And if we see a kid with their cell phone, it gets turned into the office and they have to pick it up at the end of the day. Now, my son being in high school, they have their phones on them all day.
Interesting. Well, you also talked about taking a month and a half to write a research paper.
Mm-hmm.
So what are the schools doing about all the artificial intelligence like ChatGPT?
Olivia can probably speak more on that being in the LMC.
How do they
I
know
know
if they're
there's
writing their own
programs
papers?
that you can download and you can see if they have plagiarized or taken it from someone. And we do have problems with that. But if we're all being honest, probably some of us did I took a few liberties probably on my paper too and did a little quoting without quotations on my paper, I'm sure. But I think kids have utilized or tried to utilize that quite a bit, but there's several different programs that they can use to see if it's true or not, or their words.
Yeah, and I'm going to just jump in here because I don't want to shut this conversation off, but I know Sydney's going to have to shut down the Facebook thing because, getting ready for church, the next thing. Recommended apps, the Bible app. You can actually get the catechism on your smartphone or device too. So just shameless plugs for things that are actually helpful for them in our regard. But let's thank Shelley for writing.